Okay, students, welcome to another class. And today we have Beci Mahnken with us from MEI Mouse Fan Travel. And she's going to talk to us today about um, her experience as a travel agent, what goes into being a travel agent, and how she works with both the consumers and the companies in order to offer that final product that consumers and vacationers want. And then we'll also get into some of her background and fandom and things like that. So without me talking much more, I want to welcome Beci and welcome to class. Thank you for doing this. If you could start out by giving us some history into your background, how you became a fan, kind of leading up to being a travel agent and your specializations.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about this opportunity. I don't get a lot of opportunity to talk about the fandom side of this, so I can't tell you how much it means to me to be able to kind of connect that passion with my career. For me, I have had a history now of almost 22 years in the travel industry. And it's almost painful to say that because it doesn't seem like it, which is even better and speaks to the fact that I found the right pathway in my career. I'm kind of a jack of all trades and master of none. So when I got out of school, I went right into emergency medicine, believe it or not, and I became an EMT. I was a firefighter. Did that for a while. Enjoyed helping people. It was all on that focus of helping people. From there, I was recruited out and I actually did, ready for this, lighting and pyrotechnics for rock bands. And I
All
was
right.
on the road for almost 9 years doing that. Just kind of stumbled my way through things that made me happy, that I
Mm-hmm.
found out I could do them for a living. From there, I ended up in the Seattle area working for various software companies in their customer service departments, including, this will age me, Egghead Software way back when, which led me to meeting my husband, which led me to, I'm now tired of working for a company of 500 people and I want to do something that I'm passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
My husband looked at me and he said, "Well, what are you passionate about?" And I said, "You know what? I kind of like travel." And he said, "Well, let's figure out how to do this." And he actually coded a website for me to get me connected into the travel industry. And I'm self-taught from the very beginning. I got that love for Disney in particular from my father. He took me to Disneyland when I was 7 for my 7th birthday. And to this day, he's now passed. To this day, I walk into the gates of Disneyland and I feel my father there.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of gave me that love and excitement. But it wasn't like I went every year. Like you see families now, it's their annual thing that they've got to go to Disney every year. For me, I went when I was 7, and then I didn't go again till my 21st birthday. And most people, when they're going to spend their 21st birthday somewhere, you don't think it's going to be Disney because the place they're not serving alcohol is probably not your 21st birthday place. But I was on the road at the time and we had finished a gig in Lompoc, California. And we packed up all the gear at midnight and I got my car and I drove to Disneyland and I spent the night in my car in the Disneyland parking lot so I could be in Disneyland on my 21st birthday. So I had all of that strange passion for this magical place instilled in my veins at that point. So it took me a while to figure out, through all the careers that I'd had that led me to this thing that I love so much, how can I turn that passion
Mm-hmm.
into something that could pay the bills? And happily 22 years ago I figured that part out.
Great. And thank you for the introduction and kind of like your history to where you got now. And I have to say your time as a pyrotechnic expert um, sends me in a different direction of questions as far as um, the kind of the technical aspects of it. But one thing that I think is really interesting from that is having that background. Then when you go to a park, when you see a show, do you find yourself kind of looking for those technical things or trying to, in a way, dissect what's going on.
Constantly.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange because when I made the choice to leave lighting design and leave that backstage atmosphere, it took me a while before I could even go to a concert
Hmm.
because it's never looking at what's going on the performance. It's looking up and looking at the follow spot operators and looking at where the pyro setting is and looking who's controlling the boards where. So I'm constantly looking around. So in the parks, I do the exact same thing. I'm watching the wings of the show to see when the next cue is so I can see what's coming up next. It's very distracting because my brain now works that way
Yeah.
as opposed to just sitting and enjoying the show. It takes some practice for me to do that.
Well, and I think one of the really neat things about, in particular, like Disney, is you have someone who's a casual observer, maybe has gone to a park. This is their first time. They don't know anything about Disney, or maybe they've been 2 or 3 times, but they're still that casual participant. They can enjoy things just as much as everyone else, but they're really quite possibly looking at something else because that they're looking at the show, they're looking at the buildings, and as you're walking through the park, they're not necessarily paying attention to, as you walk down Main Street, what happens, or why you don't walk in the middle of Liberty Square in the Magic Kingdom. But those people who want to do a deep dive into all of that, they're looking at all of those things, and they
Yeah.
kind of know the history and the trivia and everything behind. So to me, in a way, that it seems really, really neat, and almost would add to that experience, that you're looking for those technical aspects, and you're trying to see, what's coming next, and constantly, in a way, learning kind of how things are done in this situation.
Well, a great example now is the new Harmonious, which is coming
Okay.
to Epcot. They're now floating out the barges. And all I've seen is pictures because I've been sitting in this chair in Seattle for going on a year now. So I haven't
Mhm.
had a chance to travel. Thank you, COVID. But I'm seeing the pictures of the float outs and I'm looking at all the little pieces on what looks like the Stargate. Let's be honest here. It
Yeah.
looks like it's right out of the movie. But you can see the lighting elements and you can see how, or trying to figure out how they're going to be used. So it really does kind of take you down a rabbit hole of the
Mhm.
possibilities when you don't know what to expect.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really fun thing. So if we the kind of the first topic, dealing with travel agency, is, how did you talked about why you wanted to get into it, or kind of that initial thought of, or moment when you knew that's what you wanted to do. How did you go from knowing you wanted to do it to then starting to run your own travel agency and your own travel services?
Yeah, that's a long story in itself. It's almost the good and the bad part about the industry because it was almost too easy.
Mhm.
Um, it was something that I wanted to do. I had a passion, but I had no knowledge. So I started by looking at different organizations that travel advisors belong to, like ASTA. There was NACTA. There were others way back when in the olden days when I first started. Not as many are out there now for organizations, but I found an organization that had recommendations of agencies that you could join as an independent contractor. So there are a couple of different ways you can go. And for anybody who really wants to get into this business, I always advise find a local agency that's brick and mortar that you can go to, that you can meet people, that you could um, see if they have an open position or some type of learning experience that you
Mhm.
can work with somebody and watch over their shoulder. The other way is how I did it. You find an agency that's willing to take you on as an independent contractor, which means you are running your own business, but you are running it through them as a
Okay.
service. So I found them. I started learning the ropes through this other agency. Um, I found that I really enjoyed it. I worked really hard. I found some opportunities. And by the way, at that point, there was no specialization. It was, I sell travel.
Hmm.
So you can sell Disney, or you could sell a Royal Caribbean cruise, or you could sell a backpack trip to Europe. There's all kinds of opportunities in what you sell. But over time, what you find that you do is you find a niche, that thing that you're passionate about.
Hmm.
Because if you know more about a destination or a supplier, you're going to do much more justice to your clients, with actual information, rather than just going, yeah, hey, I can go and order this for you and give you a couple of tickets to go on your way. Um, when I worked with them, I think it was about 2 years in, that I decided that I wanted to branch my business out to really focus on that Disney passion.
Okay.
And I made a deal, struck a deal with the owner of the agency to help me with other agents, so that we could kind of have all these companies working together to handle the potential volume, because it took off like that.
Hmm.
Then we had a little thing called 9/11 that hit us. And that was my first time I'd ever really hit a challenge in the travel industry. Um, as a matter of fact, the owner of that agency approached me and said, this is it. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to retire. I want to sell the business. Can I sell it to you? And so I actually bought my very first travel agency on September 19th,
Okay.
2001, which anybody, if you tell that to anyone who's in the industry, would go, you're nuts. You're a crazy person, because 9/11 is going to completely change everything that we know about travel, and no one's going to want to travel for a while.
Hmm.
So, but I saw it differently. I knew that at that time, people needed to be together, and they're still going to travel. Families will need to be together. And where do families feel safe? Disney.
Hmm.
And it actually took off. Our business really took off because we had that family focus and people wanting to be together in a safe environment. So that's kind of how I got to that point of wanting to own a business and expand upon that business. But one of the things that drives me a little crazy about the travel industry is that, eh, kind of going back to that thing about it being too easy, there are organizations out there who will help you and guide you, and you become members of, and you have to have a certain number to be able to be paid commission. But there's not one overarching body that looks over everybody to make sure everyone's doing it right and legally.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that stands on the soapbox about integrity and making sure that you're licensed and insured to actually do the job, because you're taking on the responsibility of people's memories and their vacations and their money. So uh, sadly, there's a ton of agencies that are out there that don't have all the licensing and the insurance and so forth, because it's too easy to just say, hey, today I'm a travel agent, come book
Hmm.
with me. And unless a consumer really has done their due diligence, they may not know the difference between someone who's licensed and insured and someone who's not.
Well, and that's a great point with someone who, if something happens, you are insured against
Mhm.
whatever is going, whatever negative impact you're going to see.
Yeah, there's
And
actually oh, sorry, there's a
no, go ahead.
few different levels. There's like E&O, or errors and emissions insurance, is what you have to carry. But aside of that is also, there's seller of travel laws in several states.
Okay.
And many people don't realize that, even I'm sitting in Washington state, but I have to be licensed as a
Hmm.
seller of travel in California and in Florida and in Hawaii, as well as Washington, because according to those states, anybody in their state, any of their constituents, could see the advertising from me on the internet. Therefore, they have to be licensed and to sell travel.
Okay.
So if you have an agency out there that's sitting in Illinois that may not understand that they need to be licensed in those 4 or 5 states, they sell to somebody, even if they have E&O insurance, the E&O company can say, you weren't licensed as a seller of travel to sell
Mm.
to a resident of California, so we're not going to cover you. So
So is it, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it really is an onion that you have to make sure that
Yeah.
you're always keeping up with the laws and regulations.
So is it only those three states that you have to have a particular license, or are there other states as well? Like, is it all 50 states?
Most states do have some sort of regulation for
Okay.
cellular travel. However, those few states, Iowa, California, Florida, Washington, Hawaii. Iowa's put theirs on hiatus for the moment during COVID, but those states require anybody, if you're going to sell travel to any of the residents in that state, you have to be licensed. There are
Okay.
others who are states that only if you reside in that state do you have to have a license. So there's a lot of research you have to do to make sure
Yeah.
that you're doing it right.
And it sounds like it is in most states, is it the point of sale to the consumer? So I live in Tennessee. So the regulations would be under Tennessee. Are there other states also where maybe I live in Tennessee, but I'm planning a trip to Florida or California? So there's actually the regulations in those states cover um, cover the insurance and cover the travel and everything.
It's usually the state where you reside
Okay.
because you are the resident of that state, and therefore those laws will cover you. We adhere to the highest level, and the highest level of client protection or consumer protection is California.
Okay.
So we do everything to the California rule because it's going to cover everybody else pretty
Yeah.
much. Florida is a close second, and then Washington is a close third. So it's really interesting how each different state, how far they'll go to protect their residents.
Okay. And then I'm guessing there's a lot of regulations internationally as
Yes.
well, that if you're selling to someone who lives in London, then there's regulations there. And I'm guessing it's the same. You have to follow the regulations in where they are living, whatever country or city state they're living in.
What helps us in international travel is that we book through suppliers, and
Okay.
those suppliers are adhering to the international locations. There are actually some suppliers that say you cannot sell to anybody outside of the United States because they have their own sales presence or channel in other countries. So it really depends on who you're working with and where they're going.
Okay. And so I know that something you said earlier, the advice you would give someone is find a brick and mortar agency to learn from, or work with, such like you did, work with an agency that will, you can work as an independent contractor. What are, for for people who are thinking about going this route, because we have several students who this is their area of interest. What are the pros and cons of both approaches?
Well, if you're going to go towards the brick and mortar, the big pro is that you have somebody there who can look over your shoulder and who can guide you through how things are going to be done. And you can also see from an owner's perspective, from a travel advisor's perspective, how the day to day goes in the industry. Where, as if you go to that piece of being an independent contractor, that really depends on who you choose to work with, because some companies are true what they call host agencies, and all they're there to do for you is to run your commissions and make sure that you're getting paid and make sure that you have um, the numbers, the correct suppliers to go to, but they're not really there to train you. They're not there um, to make sure that you are running your business in the right way.
Okay.
So I'm kind of a hybrid. Our agency is technically a host agency, but not really, because all the agents that come to us, we do train them. We give them 8 weeks worth of first step training, and then they always have access to us for questions or any times that they run into problems. But inevitably, their business belongs to them. So
Okay.
the hours that they work, the business that they try to generate, all of that is on their own shoulders.
Okay.
With us, though, it's a little bit different because, again, we're more of a hands-on perspective. So the biggest thing to do is your due diligence. What do you personally need? Are you looking to be the owner of your company and call the shots and make sure that you are the person saying, yeah, I want to work on Saturday, or no, I'm not working on Saturday? An independent contractor direction is probably how you want to go. If that's not important to you and you want to work a 9 to 5 job, you want to not have the full responsibility of what becomes a 24/7 scenario with the responsibilities that you
Hmm.
have when you're dealing with clients, you might want to go the brick and mortar or an employee of an agency.
Well, and I want to point out to students and anyone watching or listening that um, it's very important. You mentioned 24/7. A lot of that has to do with you're in Pacific time.
Yeah.
If you are helping someone who is in Eastern time, then I mean that's, essentially 3 hours ahead of where you are. And then that's not even taking into account if someone is then you get off a call with someone in the Eastern time zone, and then you're having to deal with an issue of someone who's traveling in Hawaii, or maybe someone who's traveling internationally.
Yeah.
And so the the next question is that global aspect of the industry. Um, Aside from just time zones, what are some of the things you have to look for when you're working with people traveling all over the world?
Yeah, and time zones do play into it in a lot of areas. Like, for example, from being a planner and planning in Disney, that 7 a.m. Eastern time is the
Hmm.
golden hour for grabbing restaurant reservations. My little butt is up out of bed and ready at 3:45 to make sure that I grab things for the people who are trusting me to be that person to grab them for them. Or when a new cruise itinerary is
Hmm.
released, that's usually going to be around 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time.
Okay.
So where I am, I have to get up and make sure that I'm ready to grab things for clients, or to prep the website, or to prep the agents that are working on it. So there's a lot of different levels of it for that. Internationally, problems don't happen just during your business hours.
Yeah.
So, and it could be that somebody just missed their flight and they're trying to
Mhm.
get from Rome to London, and they have no recourse but you. So my clients have my cell number and they are welcome. If that phone rings at 3 o'clock in the morning, I know that I have to be prepared to answer it, get up out of bed and take care of their problem.
Mhm.
So you are really taking on that responsibility in a 24/7 scenario. And there's no bigger thing than, except for this last year, COVID, um, hurricane season hits, and you
Yeah.
might have 200 to 300 guests that are out on different ships throughout the Caribbean, and a hurricane comes. It's ordering pizza time and 13 hours on the phones and trying to make sure that guests are going to have a flight home when they get back to whatever port they end up in. So it really is a lot of response, an emergency response, which I think that takes me back to my old EMT days without
Yeah.
the blood or the broken bones. But you have to be there and be the advocate and be that safety net for somebody on their travel or during their
Okay.
travel.
Okay. And then from from the consumer perspective, the person who's using the service,
Yeah.
um, for people who haven't used a travel agent, kind of run us through what the services you can provide. I know before we started recording, you talked about you can do as much or as little as a person needs or wants. Can you kind of walk us through what a person's vacation looks like when they use an agency?
Sure. And this does vary depending on the agency you work with, but I'm going to speak from what we do because I'm one of those people that are like, we're going to do as much or as little as you need. An advocate is a good thing to have,
Hmm.
especially in times that are so uncertain, like right now. It's true. Anybody can go to the internet right now and book your own vacation. But A, do you know that you're getting the best price? Do you know that you're getting um, the right accommodations. Like for a lot of people will go and try to book a cruise for themselves and they'll come back and want to book again, but they contact us because they say, you know what? No one told me that I was going to be right across the way from the laundromat and I was
Yeah.
up all night listening to all that going on. Or no one warned me that the cabin that I chose was right underneath the nightclub. And my 2-year-old couldn't sleep all night because that's all we heard was the thumping from the
Yeah.
nightclub above. So it's a lot of leaning on the expertise of a travel advisor. We've been there, we know what to watch for, we know how to steer clear of the potholes in the road, which you may not be able to do that yourself. And it's not because you're not capable of figuring it out. It's that the information is not that easy to find, and there are things out there you don't know what to avoid if you don't know it exists. So for us, we've kind of been down all the roads and know where the problems could be, and we can steer you around it. In the Disney scenario, clearly that's part of the fun for a lot of people. I know I have clients who have an Excel spreadsheet that goes on for 42 tabs that they're going to be here at this specific time and they're going to do this restaurant, they're going to do this fast pass, and they've got it all narrowed out. And for them, that's part of the fun. That the
Yeah.
vacation starts when you start the planning process.
Hmm.
For others, it's like, dude, it's all yours. I
Yeah.
don't want to have to worry about that. You just tell me where to go and where to show up. So we can help in either scenario. So let's take that Uber planner guy for a second. While it's fun for you to take care of all of your, let's say, fast passes come back. So your fast passes, your dining reservations, your transportation options, all those little pieces of the planning are part of the fun. Then you can utilize us to just be the advocate who is there in case something goes wrong.
Okay.
So if we book it for you, you've done all your planning, you step up to the desk to check in, and all of a sudden you discover that you thought you had a pool view, but no, you're looking at an air conditioner on top of a roof. Instead of you having to sit there and argue about that, you call me
Okay.
and I get to go, okay, no, because we've confirmed that you're in a pool view room. Drop off your stuff, go have fun in the parks. Let me handle this.
Okay.
And then we work that through. But some of the biggest things that we can do for an Uber planner, be there for something goes wrong. And then if an offer comes out,
Hmm.
we will get on the phone. We will do the whole time. We will proactively apply those savings. And probably, usually before you even out of bed, and you'll get an email that says, "Oh, by the way, an offer just dropped this morning. We've applied this savings, and you just saved $800.
Yeah.
So, do you want to upgrade to a new resort, or do you want to just pocket that cash and spend it elsewhere?" So, there's always a benefit, especially using somebody who's no fee, and that's the big deal. And there's a debate in the industry right now because we are travel advisors. We do consult. We do a
Hmm.
lot of work. Um, some people and some agencies do big, huge trip planning itineraries and put a lot of work into it just for somebody to go book it themselves online.
Yeah.
So that has become an issue in the industry. So some people are going to planning fees.
Okay.
We, however, have chosen not to do that. We're still going to trust that people who come to us are going to book with us and utilize our services. And how we're paid is the commission that's paid by the supplier. A
Okay.
lot of people misunderstand and think that you're paying more because the supplier's paying us commission, when in fact it's the same or less out of your pocket. And they're just covering us with commission to make sure that we're compensated for the
Hmm.
work we're doing on behalf of their brand.
Well, and it's a really interesting point. I wanted to get, I'm glad you brought it up because I wanted to get into um, how agents are paid. And so from the supplier perspective, if they are, sometimes the prices are lower,
Mhm.
um, then is it a supply and demand aspect for the supplier that they want people to be able to be there, and so they are wanting to make it as easy as they can make it for consumers because you have consumers there. That's how you make your money. You obviously want them to come back. um what do you think is kind of the emphasis or the push from the supplier's perspective to want to do all of this?
Well, there's a couple of ways of thinking about it. So let's take, for example, a $1,000 Disney trip, right?
Mhm.
And it's just the land package. So you have $1,000 that client A calls in directly to Disney and books that $1,000 package. They have no money out of their pocket, right? Because they're not paying commission. However, they are compensating people on the phones who are taking the reservation,
Mhm.
who are working through when they make dining reservations, when they have other questions, as they'll have to call generally 4 or 5 times during the planning course of their trip. So they are actually spending more money from having to pay people on the phones in the back end to take care of the planning pieces. Or you can have an agent book it, pay them a 10% or 15%. Well, Disney, it's a 10%. It's 10% across the board, a 10% commission on top of it. And then that person, that agency becomes the question and answer
Okay.
location. Therefore, they don't have to pay the head count
Yeah.
from the supplier side. So the other thing that's really important to a supplier and why we're important for them is that we are the people who make the recommendations and the suggestions.
Mhm.
So if you come to me and you say, I want to go on a cruise, but I have no clue where to start, it just looks fun, then I'm going to sit with you for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes more, and really find out what it is you're looking for in the experience, because
Mhm.
not every cruise is the same. Each one is going to give you a different focus. Some are going to focus on families, some on food, some on destinations, some on the ship. So it does take a lot of consultation to find out what's going to be the perfect match for you. So a lot of the suppliers are angling for that to be that recommendation, or at
Okay.
least to educate us as their sales channel so we better match the client with the experience. So
Yeah.
a good example of that is way back when Holland America has always been known to cater more to the senior set. Not that families don't travel on it, they certainly do. But if you're looking for, if you're a newly married couple and you're in your 20s and you're looking for nightlife and being up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, partying uh, at the rave party that's going on some ships, I'm not going to put you on a Hall American
Yeah.
ship because they don't have it.
Yeah.
So nothing good or bad about any particular one. It's just different, and you have to do a lot of question and answer sessions to really get down to what's going to be best for a client.
Okay. And the aspect of you're talking about being an advocate for the consumer,
Mhm.
but also the point of sale and making recommendations from the supplier. When you when you are doing your research and you go on research trips, whether that is to a lot of people, those sound like really fun research trips, by the way. I mean, when you're going on different cruises or you're going on different vacations, um, what kind of when you're walking through a cruise ship, are you being told, here are some fun things to look out for? Um, or do you also kind of go off and just walk around on your own and do your own research and have your agents do their own research, so you can better inform people?
It's a little bit of both. So, and first of all, if they look fun, I'm doing my job right, because I market a lot experientially. So I'll
Yeah.
go out and I'll live stream and I'll post and I'll say, hey, look at where I am. You need to be here too. So if I make it look like it's fun and relaxing, I'm doing my job, but you're not seeing really what they're like.
Yeah.
So a good example is a cruise ship is a great example. They come out with a brand new ship and they bring it to a port and they invite travel agents for
Hmm.
usually a one night experience where you're going to have to see the entire ship in 1 or 2 days at the most. to be able to report back. And what they will do for you is they will give you, here are the highlights of the ship.
Okay.
Go out and see these things. So, for example, Royal Caribbean on the Harmony of the Seas. Here, go look at the neighborhoods that are on board. Here, we're going to show you an example of these 10 cabin categories, so you can walk in and see them and take pictures. But other than that, it's a free for all. You
Hmm.
then, outside of those talking points that they want you to look at, then you experience it the way you think you would or your clients would, and try to find those little hidden gems that maybe a lot of people aren't talking about. So if they're talking about ice skating at sea, that's awesome. But what else is there here that they're not really
Yeah.
telling me in the bullet points that I can point out? Same thing happens on a Disney ship. You get a lot of focus on the characters. You get a lot of focus uh, on the Broadway shows and that magical Disney difference, and you get those bullet points. But then you got to figure out what those really are, so you can tell your clients and help them understand what the experience is before they put down to five, ten thousand
Hmm.
dollars to go on a vacation.
Okay. And the the importance of selling the experience. I think a lot of people now are used to seeing content providers and social media influencers um, in on vacation, on different cruises, wherever they are. If we're talking about Disney, in the Disney parks and doing things, doing live streams, walking around and talking to people. From how important is that? Because that goes back to like ideas of in the sports industry, you want full stadiums because you want people to see that they're having a good time. Because if you're flipping through the channels and you see a game where there's 50 people in the stands, you're probably going to keep flipping to that through the channel, and you don't want to go to that game. If you see 5,000 people in the stands and they're all having a good time,
The fear of
then
missing out.
pre-COVID, yeah, you want to go and you want to experience that. So for someone who wants to be a travel agent, how important is it to have those experiential um, kind of walkthroughs and lessons, if you will, for people?
It's really interesting, and that's a great question, because a lot of travel advisors or agencies have to really figure out what their best money spent is going to be in the
Hmm.
marketing side of things, right? So a lot of the traditional people are still going to go down the, I'm going to send a mailer, I'm going to do an email, I'm going to um, send out brochures, I'm going to spend more time having consultations with potential clients. Others like me have chosen to take advantage of those. I'm here. Let me show you. Let me instead of giving you a brochure that you can try to visualize you standing in there, let me stand in there and point out these things that you would experience or you would
Hmm.
enjoy, or some things you might not enjoy. I mean, there's some things that about different destinations that you need to warn people about too, and not, it's not to shy them away from it. How I look at it is you're providing the pros and the cons of a destination or a supplier and letting them decide on what's going to be best for them.
Hmm.
So with the influencers and the people that are out, especially from a fan perspective, if you're into the Disney fandom, the people that are out there in the parks that are live streaming, that are bringing stuff to you, it serves several different purposes. I think, first of all, not a lot of people get to go to Disney every single
Hmm.
year, let alone every single month. So it allows you to have that experience of a little bit of magic and that Disney fun in your home in real time. It also allows you to see what's new or what's different or what's happening, which really plays into those Disney fans like myself that can't wait to be there when you're not there. So that has a piece of the pie, but from a marketing perspective or from a business perspective, I think it's invaluable, because again, if somebody goes into a hotel or into a resort that you've never seen before and you get a live stream of what it's like, then you're going to start thinking, huh, maybe that's a place that I want to stay next time. which you might not get that feeling from an email that hits
Yeah.
your in bin.
Yeah. Well, and I think also the idea of something that's live, like a live stream,
Yeah.
as opposed to something that is a promotional message or something that's planned, whether that in particular like videos that are there and things are staged in a way that are very
Yeah.
controlled. It seems it seems like with everything, consumers are going more that live stream route.
Because it's
Have you? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, because it's organic and
Yeah.
it's not from a company perspective trying to show you their best, most positive light. That's what I was kind of alluding to, where you might get the good, the bad, and the ugly
Yeah.
about something in a live stream. You can also tell because most influencers who are being paid by that particular company to help try to control your thought in a certain way do have to notate it that they have been
Yeah.
that they're being paid for that exposure. So I always watch for that too. But I really believe that if you identify with somebody, you follow them on Instagram or you follow them on Facebook or you follow them on Twitter, whatever, and you identify with the things that they like and the hotels that they say, hey, this is really cool, and you think, yeah, that was really cool,
Hmm.
you follow them.
Yeah.
And then when they bring you something new, you tend to trust them
Yeah.
because they've built up that trust in the relationship over time. So you kind of get to know the ones that you can trust. So when they say, yeah, this is worth the money, then you'll go, okay, it's worth the money then. So
Okay.
you find the ones that you trust, you stick with them, um, and you'll get good recommendations for things that might be a good fit.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up trust because that's as in everything, especially now
Yeah.
with um, during the pandemic, but moving into the future and the way consumer behavior is going anyway. Talk about how important trust is and how you establish that trust for consumers and maintain that trust throughout the relationship.
And that is like the $1 million question, obviously, because for me, the travel industry is nothing about travel.
Hmm.
It's really nothing about the cruise ships or the destinations or the hotels. It's about relationships. And in order for you to trust me halfway across the country to put your big, huge trip to Disney World together, you have to trust me
Hmm.
in my judgment. You have to trust the fact that I'm taking your credit card and giving it to Disney. You have to trust the fact that I have set all this stuff up for you. Um, in this world of so much being online, if I breach that trust, everybody's going to know it because you're going to post about it.
Hmm.
And then it's that old adage of if people are going to hear or talk about something that's gone horribly wrong first before they talk about something that's going wonderfully right. So I have to make sure that I live up to the expectations. I live up to the promises that I say that I'm going to do for you and that I actually deliver on the things that you expect.
Yeah.
So trust is a huge core part of that relationship. And if I don't have a relationship with you, I don't have a client.
Okay. Yeah. And I think that you bringing up with um, like security and everything.
Yeah.
So do travel agents and agencies, do they, I mean, they're obviously susceptible to the same thing that everyone is, and the examples we've seen of major corporations and their data breaches and everything. So is that something that travel agents also have to deal with, whether they're consulting with a third party company for data protection and things like that?
Well, luckily for us, the way that we do things, and I highly encourage others to do this too if security is an issue. When we take a credit card from somebody, we are actually giving it to the supplier and they're running the card. So
Okay. Yeah.
on your credit card statement, it's not going to say MEI Travel. It's going
Yeah.
to say Walt Disney Company. So we're not retaining that information. We don't have credit card processing that's going on on our side that we have to worry about. Obviously, privacy protection and data protection is important, and we use a third party software that is making us promises that everything is, secure, and we believe them. So, protecting people's privacy and protecting their information is very important. Where
Okay.
even 10 years ago, you would see agencies that were just writing stuff down in notebooks, which I was always like, no, it's got to be somewhere that
Yeah.
you can't get my birth date or my passport number and that type of critical, sensitive information. So it is important that you um, seek out the right companies to work with. It's like anything that you do when you are combining your brand with a service. You want to make sure you do the due diligence and they have everything in place to protect you.
Yeah. Well, and on that note, if when you interact with people who possibly don't want to give their passport, they don't want to give their credit card or anything, um, do you set them up with, okay, here is the website where you go and you put in this information, and then like you do it all on your own? Like, how do you work with the people who are really resistant to sharing that information?
Well, unfortunately, they have to share the
Okay.
information, whether it be with us or with the supplier, because
Yeah.
you're going to have to tell them your passport number to be able to get cleared to, take that flight. Or
Yeah.
like if you're doing an Adventures by Disney trip or a cruise line, sometimes there are suppliers that will allow the client themselves to go in and register and give that information, and it doesn't have to come to us.
Okay.
Other times we do have to take it and pass it on to whoever needs it to make sure that the arrangements are done properly. So if somebody's really resistant to giving that information, I think it's having a conversation and putting them at ease about how the data is going to be taken, how it's going to be used, and then what's going to happen to it after you're done with it.
Yeah.
So I think it all just comes down to that again, relationship and the communication.
And so when you work with several different companies,
Mhm.
but there is, you do specialize working with the Walt Disney Company and their vacations and their experiences. Um, what, I guess, was it mostly your fandom that kind of pushed you down that specialty path?
Yeah.
Or what combination of your fandom and what the company itself does has made it kind of a great specialty or niche area?
For me, it's all about the passion that I personally
Okay.
have for the company. Truth be told, sometimes they're not the easiest company to work with when you can compare them with other suppliers, only because they are so brand aware and so
Mhm.
protective of their brand, which is something that I respect greatly. So it is that thing that I know that when I start talking to a family about potentially going to Disney World, that every ounce and fiber of my being is going to come blurting out of how much I love this experience of being at Disney. For me, it turns me into a 10-year-old with a credit card, which allows me to be that child.
Yeah.
I get to run around like crazy and taste this and drink that and write on that and go to bed only when they have to like kick me out of the park after the kiss goodnight. Um, I know that that passion is going to
Yeah.
come forward and hopefully help them have as magical of time as I do when I'm there. My other niche is cruises too, so I do get just as passionate, but that came from the fact that I got to go on them and I got to experience them, and I came back and went, "Oh my gosh, it's so amazing to sail on this ship because they've got, robotic bartenders or
Yeah.
they have, these amazing theatrical experiences that you have to you can't even imagine is on a ship." So a lot of what has driven me down the path of my niches is driven by my passion.
Okay. Well, and that's something we talk about a lot in classes and in the programs is when you're passionate about something, you try to do a better job at it, you put more of yourself into it, the end product ends up being
Yeah.
much better. And that's something that's pretty easy for people to see
Yeah,
when someone's passionate about something.
it's very true. And for this, I mean, I stepped out of a corporate job. I was high level management for a software company and making a lot of money at the time. And but you know what? It wasn't buying me happiness.
Yeah.
It wasn't making me a better person. It wasn't feeding my soul.
Yeah.
And so when my husband said, "What is it you want to do?" And I said, "You know what? I love travel." And he goes, "Let's figure it out." So I went down this path, and it definitely is not something that you're going to become a multi-million dollar person in. This is not a place to that is going to make a lot of money for you. You're going to be able to make a very decent living, but it's not going to make you rich.
Yeah.
However, the there has to be a benefit and a price tag that you gain from being happy
Yeah.
and doing something that when you wake up the morning, you can't wait to open up the email to see who wants to go where and what vacation that you're going to be researching today. I mean, it could be that I'm working on a Disney World trip today, and then tomorrow I could be working on some overwater bungalows in Bora Bora,
Yeah.
or the next day I might be working on a 14-day cruise around the through the Panama Canal. It's such a neat way to wake up and have something different and a new learning experience around every curve. So I think that's something that really draws me to it. It gives me an opportunity to do things like our company. When we set up the corporation, we give a certain amount back to charities with
Okay.
every year too. So that allows me to play philanthropist and
Yeah.
get uh, feeding my soul through helping others. So those pieces that you find in anything you do, whether it be travel or whatever career you go down the path of, it's going to be much better for you and your life and your soul if it feeds your soul.
Yeah. Well, and on that topic, we've had a few people talk in the class and talk to the students about making a career change and going from a career that maybe there's a lot of pressure to be in. There's a lot of pressure to keep someone in a certain career path, but it's not bringing them joy,
Yeah.
which ultimately is impacting other areas of their life. So if you could just real quickly kind of talk about what what was it like making your transition from leaving something that was, like you said, is corporate, it's established, and then striking out on your own. Because a lot of people have talked about that, and a lot of people are dealing with that now
Yeah.
in the world.
Well, for me, I was in a really good position. I was married to somebody who was bringing in a steady paycheck, so I could just kind of hurdle myself off the cliff and go, okay, hopefully I'll make some money today. It took time to really kind of get the business going, but I've always looked at it this way. Every time I've gone from one career into this other opportunity, a door opened, and I decided to walk through it.
Mhm.
And the key for me is I always knew I could go back.
Okay.
I always knew that I could when I took this thing to go learn about theatrical pyrotechnics and lighting, I could always go and find a job in an ambulance company anywhere across the US if I needed to. I could always go back.
Hmm.
So it gave me that confidence to go, you know what? I'm going to go to this. I'm going to go try this for a little while and see if it's something that I enjoy more.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that when it came from the difference between going from a corporate environment to here, it's all yours and now you're responsible. It was definitely a different emotion, a different feeling, because you're going from a place that has many levels of people that you have to deal with and make happy.
Yeah.
And then again, they also have the responsibility for the when things go horribly wrong. So you could always pass that off to somebody else in a corporate environment, or someone else is going to take it from you and say, no, this decision's mine and I'm going to make it. Takes the pressure off.
Okay.
When you do this and you step out into a world of a business that you're going to own, and everything you say, everything you do is going to impact somebody. Um, it's a lot of responsibility and it's a big weight, but that's also what usually drives people like me who are real entrepreneurs, having that possibility in front
Hmm.
of you that you don't know where you could possibly take it. And it has so much opportunity. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So I was always driven by that. Where could this go?
Yeah.
Is this going to be you at your in your office, in your home office for the rest of your life, handling 5 or 6 clients a day and sending them on trips? Or are you going to end up being one of the people that people turn to for any Disney information because that's what you know and that's what you're passionate about, and then people are going to trust when you send them there?
Yeah.
Um, that's what excites me, is the possibilities.
Okay. So I want to transition into talking about what we're going through right now, what everyone is going through, consumers, everyone around the world. We are going through a traumatic experience right now
Mhm.
that we don't know when we will come out of that. We don't know what a new normal will look like, when
Yeah.
it will start. I feel like we're going to look up 3 or 4 years from now and think, oh yeah, that was actually the new normal. Like some of the things that are happening right now is actually the new normal because there's never a clear definition of when a new normal or normal starts.
Right.
So can you tell us what the experience has been helping people who have had their vacations negatively impacted by the pandemic and all of the travel restrictions that at least were present at the beginning of the pandemic. And then, also include in there how difficult it is or how kind of savvy you have to be to deal with a situation like this, much like, as you mentioned earlier, when you would have to deal with 9/11 and all the restrictions after that.
Yeah, that is like a loaded pistol that you just threw at me, because I will tell you, 9/11 was one thing. It was 3 weeks, 3 weeks of
Hmm.
people not being able to go anywhere, and it did have lasting impacts. Like, I remember when I was able to walk my husband to an airport gate and
Hmm.
say goodbye to him and leave. 9/11 brought us this wonderful TSA security checkpoint, and all the things we've had to deal with there. But it also opened my eyes to the fact that a business has to be prepared for an emergency.
Hmm.
So in my little brain, I'm thinking, well, I had to survive 3 weeks without income during that time. So maybe an emergency fund of 3 months would be good. Um, and COVID said, here, hold my beer,
Yeah.
because 3 months certainly has not been enough to handle this environment. What this has been is a master class in business. And I I have so much respect and I'm in awe of the companies that have had to make up this playbook as they've gone
Hmm.
along. So if you look at a company like Disney in particular, think about all of the things that they've had to tackle, all the questions they've had to deal with. Like, should we shut down?
Hmm.
All right. If we shut down, for how long? When do we open? How do we open? How do we maintain social distancing in all the locations when, in fact, all the parks have been nothing but bringing people together? It's been
Hmm.
all about making sure that you bring all these happy people in this happy place to enjoy these happy things. And to be on a fly on the wall in some of those executive rooms where they had to really dissect the liabilities, the dangers, the things that they could do to bring it back and still keep people safe. Um, I am just in constant awe, and I can't wait till somebody starts bringing out their books about how they
Yeah.
dealt with it, for cruise lines and for Disney and airlines, how they tackled this whole challenge. For me, it was a very unique experience because I had just come from a ton of travel. Normally, in a normal year, I would be on the road about 20 to 30 weeks out of the year because
Okay.
I'm doing experiential marketing, I'm escorting groups, I'm doing things for WDW radio, I'm out there constantly trying to keep up to date with everything that's going on. So I was there for the Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway media
Okay.
event. And I came home from there. And the funny part, just as a side note, the first case of COVID was found 20 minutes from my home
Mm-hmm.
in Washington State. So I'm home here, or I'm sorry, I'm in Florida hearing all these news things. I picked up the phone and I called my husband and I said, should I come home? Should I think about maybe renting something here for a month just to not come home? What do you think I should do? And he said, we decided for me to finally come home and came home on the 9th of March. On the
Okay.
13th of March, I
Yeah.
was supposed to host a huge event in Disneyland for another client, and I was ready to get on the plane, and I got the phone call from Disney that said, "We're closing tomorrow, and your event is canceled." And I already had clients that were in the air on the way to it. I had people who were in Disneyland waiting for the event. So, and a cute side note, the name of the event was the Anything Can Happen Weekend. So the irony there.
Yeah.
Um, so that was like the kickoff to everything that I had to change in my normal routine.
Yeah.
First of all, how do we handle the clients that are in transit? How do we handle the clients that are there? We need to notify them that the event is not happening anymore. That was just the beginning of the iceberg. The rest became, okay, cruise lines are now shutting down. You cannot go to Europe any longer. Our entire world became more about cancellations and rescheduling and the possibilities versus what is the next magical vacation you're going to
Mm-hmm.
go on. That kicked into high gear when Disney World closed down. All of a sudden, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of families on the same day because they heard it was shutting down, either wondering, is my are the parks going to be open when I'm scheduled to travel, or I'm scheduled to travel and now the parks are going to be closed. What do I do?
Mm-hmm.
It turned into 12-hour a day work days for 7 days a week of just trying to roll with the changes and what testing and um, the cancellation hold times and just all the new information we had to start ingesting to make sure that clients were aware of as well. Then Disney World, as we all knew it, changed because now we have park reservations we have
Yep.
to go around and social distancing and what masks you can have or not have, or what resorts were open or closed. And if you were in a closed resort, you had to move to an open resort. I mean, everything about what we do on a daily basis changed on what felt overnight.
Yeah. So how do you, because uh, Walt Disney World, I believe, ended up staying closed for 10 weeks. Um, Disneyland has not opened yet.
Right.
Some of the international parks seemingly, some have opened and had to close again, and it wasn't at the outset like people knew how long this was going to last. I mean, I remember hearing that it was going to be 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and so everything was on pause in 2 weeks. That's entertainment, that's travel, that's sport, tourism, whatever. And but then it kept going on and on. And people would push back vacations. They would have to push them back more and push them back more. How do you, or how, what was the process of keeping those people, one, kind of calm and explaining what's going on, and then two, talking with someone about their options, whether they want to keep pushing back a vacation, or if, hey, right now is just not the best time, we'll just kind of wipe the slate clean and then we'll do this again when things are more safe.
Yeah, all of those are very valid, and they were individual conversations because different families are going to have different tolerances to what
Hmm.
was going on around them. A great example there would be the family who was going for their first time with their 3-year-old, wondering, should I even go right now? Because parades have turned to cavalcades. You don't get that iconic moment with your daughter running up to Cinderella for the
Yeah.
first time. Does that, you have to really consider, do you want to go right now? Do you want to spend $5,000 on a vacation where you can't have all the experiences you're looking for? So those were conversations. Um, there are so many different ways of having to attack this beast. It really is.
Yeah.
There, for some people, luckily, the suppliers were all down for this. So when they figured out that this was going to be more than just a couple of weeks, they came out with policies that made people feel comfortable. They weren't
Hmm.
going to lose money. Once that came out, it was a lot easier conversation. So the cruise lines are a great example. If you booked and they canceled the trip for you, you would get 125% back
Okay.
to book on a future cruise. So that started some gambling all of a sudden. It's like, wait a minute, if I don't cancel and everything turns out to be okay, I get to cruise.
Yeah.
If there is still a problem and they cancel on that date for me, I'm going to get 25% more of my money back to spend on the next cruise.
Okay.
So there was at least some good news within the process of having
Yeah.
to figure out what best, was going to be best for you.
Yeah.
But each supplier, each destination, each family was all different. So you couldn't just come up with a form letter and send it to everybody and say, okay, this is what we know and this
Hmm.
is your choice. It literally had to be, let's talk at 1 o'clock. Let's talk at 12:30. I have a spot available at 12:45 to go through your options. Zoom and I became really close friends, and we still are. Happily, a lot of our clients have also become more comfortable with the Zoom environment,
Hmm.
which is actually one of the pros that is going to come out of all of this, is that, again, going back to that relationship piece, instead of picking up the phone to talk to
Yeah.
somebody, you then get to see them now. You get to
Yeah.
at least interact and have a more meaningful conversation, and hopefully that'll stick around. Um, but the challenges are so deep with every moment things changed. And the moment you thought that it was going to be okay, all of a sudden you would get, nope, we're now canceling through
Hmm.
the end of October. And okay, so I have to now redo all of that work that I just did from the last cancellation. So it's a pretty deep rabbit hole.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of the things that may stick around, how do you see the travel industry changing from here on out? Because as we talked about, this is a traumatic experience. And when it is deemed safe, and it has been in some, or I should say, if we ever get a message that says, hey, it's safe to travel again, everybody travel again, similar to what happened a week or so after 9/11. I remember all of the messaging that came out that said, hey, travel again, this is what's needed. If we ever get that, then you're still going to have people who are very resistant to it,
Mm,
for very good reasons.
yeah.
um, what do you think the future of the travel industry is, and do you see, how long do you think we're going to be in this current pattern? Is it another year, 2 years? I don't.
That's a really good question. And first of all, let's acknowledge what it really is. We're all going through a grieving process.
Mhm.
We've lost what we thought was our normal lives. Many of us have lost the ability to see our loved ones, to do our normal routines, and in some cases, unfortunately, many of us have lost loved ones due to
Mhm.
this. So it also kind of puts you in that position of being a therapist in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, to help people get from where we've been to where we are to where we're going to be. And does everybody know, or anybody know what's really going to be ahead of us? No, I kind of stopped trying to gauge
Yeah.
it when I was about 6 months in and thinking, yeah, we're like at mile 23 of this marathon. And, come to find out we're only still at like mile 5.
Yeah.
So I stopped trying to guess. However, with vaccines on the right in front of us, starting to come out. You start seeing the numbers go down. People are feeling better about at least having the conversation about travel again, where for a while there, people were just like, no, I've already canceled 4 trips.
Mhm.
I'm done. I don't want to talk until I know I can go. I think that there's going to be a lot of long-term stick around, much like TSA
Mhm.
security places, and some of them are going to be and happily in some ways. I think supplier cancellation policies are going to be
Yeah.
much more flexible, which they were getting to a point where if you had anything that changed in your surrounding world that would change your plans, you were up for at least $200 to $400 a person in change fees. Those have somewhat gone away right now, and I think that that may be the case for a while. They may return smaller, but I think people realize that things are going to happen. If they do, we have to be able to react quicker and make sure to accommodate people.
Okay.
um, I think that, believe it or not, and this is one of my experiences from traveling when I went to Japan and China just a few years ago, 2017. This is the first time that I was really ever exposed to the Asian way of life, which included wearing masks.
Mhm.
You would walk through an airport, or you would walk down through the town into a shopping mall. People wear masks routinely.
Mhm.
And as an American, we kind of think, well, that's kind of odd. But they've been doing it right all along. I have a feeling that wearing masks in general is going to be a much more accepted policy, and maybe not as many people are going to look at you sideways if you decide to
Mhm.
wear a mask on a plane or in a theme park. A great example, I usually get the flu pretty good once a year and maybe a cold 3 or 4 times a year during travel. I have not been sick once. That's telling me that, you know what? The masks outside
Mhm.
probably do help here. So I think that's going to stick around. Um, I I'm going to go out on a limb where people are going to think I'm kind of crazy here, but I think the cleanliness now of hotels and of cruise ships and of other destinations is going to stick around. I
Mhm.
think that we're cruise ships get a bad rap. Here, let me go on a tangent for a second. They do really get a bad rap when it comes to people getting sick on board. And it's generally because people are all in one place and contained for 7 or more days in one
Mhm.
location. So if there is an outbreak of the flu or of norovirus or something else, you know where it came from because you're all still there. You actually get more infections in shopping malls and grocery stores and schools, but it's not like they know it's not a contained
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
So, but cruise ships get the bad rap. It's like norovirus. Everybody's sick on a cruise ship.
Yeah.
Well, because they're still there. In reality, I really believe that cruising is going to be one of the best places to go as soon as things start opening up, because everything's going to be clean. It's
Mhm.
going to be a bubble. Um, they're probably not going to let you go off on your own into different ports at first. You're going to be contained and controlled with the people who've already been tested, and your temperature is going to be checked every day. So I think some of that's going to stick around for a while, just to make sure that maybe norovirus doesn't keep hitting
Mhm.
ships or theme parks. So I think a lot of these brand new technologies of cleaning that everybody's kind of had to throw themselves together to figure out how to best clean a hotel room is going to stick around too.
Do you think we will um, reach a point, or maybe it'll last a few years, that before you go on a travel, you have to have a test for, right now, it would be COVID-19.
Mhm.
If in the future, depending on where you're traveling, if there is suspected outbreak somewhere, do you think um, travelers will have more health screening, not just temperature checks, but
Mhm.
actual testing and everything to be able to travel?
Well, I know that that's going to be with us for a while until at least COVID is completely knocked down. And who knows if that's going to be a year or 2 years before that actually happens. Um, they're putting a lot of technology in place to track that.
Okay.
There's a lot of talk now about vaccine passports that you would have to produce to
Hmm.
show that you've been vaccinated or tested before you get on planes to certain places. That may stick around. It's hard to predict though, because the other thing that adds to it is a resistance.
Hmm.
And the last thing the travel industry wants is to add more layers of giving people an excuse not to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So I think that there's going to be a lot of debate about how strict that's going to be. And it's going to be based on countries. I can see some countries saying, you are not coming here if you haven't been vaccinated or if you haven't had a test within the last 72 hours. The other thing too is that it adds to cost. When this first happened and they started talking about, yeah, you can fly here, but you have to have a test before you do. Those tests were costing $200 to $300 a
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
So a family of four, you ask them to spend another, $800 to $1,000 to add to their trip costs each way,
Yeah.
because now you have to travel or test going in and test coming back. I think that unless they can come up with a less expensive option of doing it or a rapid test that you can do on the fly, there might be some resistance to
Okay.
keeping that around forever. But who knows at this point?
Yeah. All right. So now I want to transition into really talking about um, primarily the fandom side of
Okay.
Disney, your fandom of Disney. And so one is the parks. What is it about the parks that you think, from an agent's perspective and also from your personal fan perspective, what is it that makes the park so relevant and popular with people that people just want to keep going back?
Oh my gosh. I, I think there's several levels to it. First of all, I think I've said before, it allows me to be a child. It
Hmm.
gives me full license to be a kid, to a 10-year-old with a credit card in a crazy place, and not have to be embarrassed that I love running up to a princess and giving them a hug.
Yeah.
Not having to kind of hold my excitement back when I get on a roller coaster and I can scream like crazy. Not to be embarrassed that I'm scared to death that at the end of this ride there's going to be a dinosaur and it's going to eat my head.
Yeah.
It just allows you to be you with no rules that typically hold you down for how you would react to something. But from that's more from my perspective. From a family's perspective, I think it's all what Walt said at the very beginning, is that he was looking for a place where daddies and daughters could be together and enjoy things that they both like to enjoy together as a family. Um, I think that that really does kind of pull you in as a family and allows parents to be people and enjoy these things together with their kids and bond
Hmm.
on another level, something that they're going to enjoy, that the kids are going to enjoy, and it really helps a family bond. And especially with technology and everything that goes on, we've kind of lost
Yeah.
that time when we were able to have dinner together every night and talk about what was going on in our lives. Now it's kind of those vacations where you get
Hmm.
together and then you talk about your lives and what you enjoy and what you don't, and you learn more about your own family in those types of experiences.
Yeah. And what do you think for people who go regularly and people who maybe haven't been ever,
Yeah.
what would be your recommendation to enjoying the parks and the resorts experience to the fullest? Wi- wi- for some people, they don't want to be overwhelmed. For some people, they like the trying to ride as many things as they can. What's your experience and what's your recommendation for people?
I have a big recommendation, especially for someone who's never been there before or maybe hasn't been there in, say, the last 10 years. You can't do it all. Don't even try to do it all. And I've seen some families that will attempt to ride everything or do everything, and it turns to be a disaster
Yeah.
because you just can't. So, one of my recommendations to any family is every family member says three things that they want to do, three priorities that they absolutely have to do or try to do. That way, you get those things in that you all really want to do, and everything else is just gravy on the top of
Okay.
it. Um, I've seen that work so well with families so that no one's arguing or whining or complaining that they didn't get to do the things that they wanted to do. Because clearly you can't cover Disney World all in one trip. Even if you were there for 10 days, you're not going to be able to do it all. So that's number one.
Well, and I think that one thing that people maybe struggle with, especially if someone who doesn't get to go very often, or maybe they get to go one time, is the price point for admission.
Yeah.
And I think the way that we think in our society, or at least in American society, is that what you pay for, you have to do certain number of things to be able to justify, paying that amount. So whether that is you have to be able to ride so many different rides or see so many different shows. And I think that kind of plays a big role in people rushing from thing to thing and getting stressed out and what should be a really fun environment, and ultimately missing out on a lot of the story that is surrounding them.
Yeah.
So how do you think, like as consumers, we sort of move past that thought that we've spent this much money, we have to do this many things, because the real joy is the times that you slow down and you take in as much as you can.
Exactly. Um, I think a lot of that has to do with having good conversations with people about expectations.
Mhm.
And the the real some people, no matter what, they're not going to take joy in little things because they really want to ride every ride.
Mhm.
That's what their expectation of the experience is going to be. They want to just go on theme park rides. And that's okay. If somebody has that as their priority, more power to you. There's ways of going about it to make sure that you get on as much as you can.
Yeah.
But for those who are wanting to soak in the detail, usually that doesn't happen on your first trip because
Yeah.
it's overload. There's too much sensory stuff going on around you that you don't stop to look at the shop windows, and you don't look at the river of poo. You don't pick up on all of these details because you're just too busy going from one place to another and trying to figure it out too, because it's not easy, or as easy as it once was, just to go to a theme park anymore because there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
Um, but a lot of it has to do with pointing out that there's so much more to the destination than the rides.
Hmm.
That there is history there. Is meaning. There are details that are fantastic if you slow down and look at them. Some people will want to do all the shows. Others are like, I can see Frozen on the movie. Why do I
Yeah.
want to, find a show that's going to take up 45 minutes of my time that I could be standing in line for a ride? So I think it's a really personal decision, but to have all the information so you can again have pros and cons, and then you decide on how best to experience it.
Okay.
A lot of people may not realize that taking a 40 minutes on the Skyliner is a great ride
Yeah.
itself. That's an attraction
Yeah.
itself. Or getting on the monorail and going to all of the resorts and taking a look at the lobbies, or what's being offered at the different resorts. There's so much more than just the parks.
Yeah. Well, and real quickly, I grew up about an hour outside of Houston, Texas, and we would, just for fun, we would go to the Houston airport, and we would get on their monorail, and that was the kind of the big fun thing for us to do every, I don't know, few months or whatever. And so those attractions, or those transportation modes, to me are attractions as well. I love
Yeah.
getting on the monorail. I haven't been on the Skyliner yet. I can't wait to be able to go and just experience all of that, because I still get that thrill and emotion of driving onto property, and whether
Yeah.
you're driving under the sign or you're driving toward Disney Springs and you're driving by a sign. um, and then later in life, I actually learned that the monorail system at, um, Houston Hobby Airport it was actually designed by the Walt Disney Company. That was one of their, that was maybe the only monorail that they designed that they sold outside of the company
That's
when
cool.
they were first designing those. So aside from the parks and aside from um, you working as an agent and helping people to experience these things, um, you're also known from social media. You're also a big Marvel fan,
Yeah.
and right
Guilty.
now we're recording this at the beginning of March 2nd in 2021. So we're leading up to the last episode of WandaVision.
Yes.
And I'm not going to ask you to make any predictions. I'm not going to make any predictions because the fun thing about predictions is you're everybody's wrong.
Uh-huh.
And there's there's fun to that because if you knew everything, yeah, there's a little bit of fun to say I knew that, but it's so great seeing the surprises.
Oh yeah.
What
Go ahead.
what I do want to ask is, like, what is it about the MCU and the way that they tell their stories? And what is it about WandaVision that is just keeping people not only engaged, but I mean, just everybody, it's part of the cultural narrative now
Yeah.
that you need to know what's going on in this show. And how does that move forward to the rest of the shows?
Oh my gosh. Let me just say, first of all, Disney couldn't have timed Disney Plus better.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Disney Plus just hit at the perfect COVID
Yeah.
time where you're at home. Here, I've got new stuff to give you to get addicted to. When they first, I was a D23 when they announced WandaVision, and I kind of went, huh? How is this gonna work? I don't understand. And so I wasn't so sure how this whole thing was gonna play out. So I was very much anticipating answering those questions.
Hmm.
And got through the first one and I went, huh, okay, all right. Second one, okay. Third one, oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Just totally sucked into this vortex. And I lovingly call it the rabbit holes of rabbit holes of rabbit holes of rabbit holes, because one of the cool things that it's done is, first, backing up because I get so excited about this whole thing. Um, I'm really glad they didn't just serve them all up to us.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that they're making us wait a week, because each week I'm doing
Yes.
this with a lot of people. I
Yeah.
have
The weekly release is amazing.
no therapy sessions. They are Marvel therapy sessions, because I have now had this opportunity to connect with friends and people where we're at the water cooler. This
Yeah.
is what eons ago what soap operas did to people,
Yep.
going, oh, what's going to happen to Dr. Drake? And this is where we are now. It's for our generation trying to figure out, wow, what
Yeah.
are they going to do next with these things? I'm glad that they served it up this way, but it's genius. It is genius how they've taken the old soap opera cliffhanger
Hmm.
into from TV into movies, back into TV, back into movies, to where we're sitting through 7 minutes of credits waiting for the two
Yeah.
second post credit drop of what could possibly be coming next. Um, the storytelling is amazing. The character development that makes you want to go have a beer with these guys, that makes you care about what happens to these characters. It has been impressive what Kevin Feige and everybody at Marvel has done with a company and with IP that at one time was suffering so badly that they had to sell the rights to so many of their characters to other companies to survive.
Yeah.
And now they're at the top of their game, and weaving in different character storylines. And WandaVision's a great example, because while it's true to the comic books, they've taken some liberties with some of the
Yeah.
storylines to keep us guessing. So it did make me, by about chapter 4, episode 4, I was going out and trying to find the comic books because
Yeah.
now I need to know everything about Mephisto because I need to figure out if he's showing up or not.
Yeah.
Or trying to discover pieces of stories that were long lost for so many or never heard of before. I mean, I never heard of Nightmare before. That was like
Hmm.
one of those like, okay, I got to now figure out who this guy could possibly be. So how genius of them
I know.
to go into story depth so much that crossed within each other that makes you so invested.
Well, and I think that there's also this idea that you mentioned they're taking characters that are not well known.
Yeah.
And this is, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy was the first. Well, Iron Man wasn't a real well-known character. That was kind
No.
of a B or C level character for Marvel,
Yep.
because they had sold off their A level characters. They had licensed out Spider-Man, they had licensed out Fantastic Four and X-Men, and so the whole MCU is really built off of these characters
Hmm.
that for a long time they could not get anything made about these characters when they were trying
Right.
to license them. And so now that they're bringing in all of these other properties, I think just really adds to it. But I think it's just genius that they're taking a character like Agatha Harkness
Yeah.
that was not, and
Left field.
I didn't grow up a comics fan. I didn't read a lot of comics when I was growing up, but apparently was not a major character in the comics, and now is a major character in this series, and to the point where people are, you talk about the soap opera aspect of it, people are hoping that she makes it out of this series because we need to see if it's a redemption arc or whatever her
Yeah.
character is going to be. We need to see her in future projects because that's the new Loki. She needs to be there, and their ability to take these characters and tell their stories in a way is just, it's incredibly fascinating to me, the
Yeah.
way that they could do that.
And one good thing with Agatha is that it, they do such an amazing job at casting
Yes.
because she is fantastic. She
Yes.
brings such a life to that character that, again, makes you involved, makes you care, makes you wonder what's going to happen next, and makes you dread if she doesn't come back. So,
Yeah.
to that point,
And that when they get characters that, or when they get um, big name actors and actresses that sign on to these movies, and you just, at the now it's common that I think being in a Marvel movie or an MCU movie is almost like the mecca
yeah.
of the industry right now for
I
actors
knew
and
that when
actresses.
Brad Pitt did the cameo in Deadpool 2. That's that's when I knew they'd made
Yeah.
it.
But it's like, that to have these big name people sign on for these projects, and a lot of times there's, Robert Redford signed on for to play an antagonist, like, which makes sense for him. He probably does not want to do multiple movies and everything, that works better for him. But it's, I don't know, I'm a big fan of everything that they do. And I, specific to WandaVision, that wasn't going to be the first show.
Right.
And I was really looking forward to the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I was really looking forward to Loki. And I was going to watch WandaVision all of the time because it was the MCU. But I
Right.
never had the connection with Wanda Maximoff or Vision in the movies like I did with some of the other series that they were coming out with. And now I'm like, I don't want this to end because of all the mystery and the intrigue. And I'm like, I know the other series are going to be like all Marvel products. And Loki's going to be a huge mystery. But like now I've almost shifted focus to how does everything live up to what WandaVision is
Yeah.
doing right now?
Yeah. And
It's,
that is a great question because I'm wondering the same. Because I was excited and am excited about Winter Soldier and that series, but I don't know how it's going to have that same heart clenching,
Yeah.
what do you mean it's only 32 minutes? And that feeling when you see the end credits start rolling, it's like, what? Wait, what?
Yeah.
I, I'm invested in those other characters. But this has really just done something, a little of its own magic
Yeah.
on many of us. And I think maybe not to be sexist or anything, but as a woman, I was a little bit more invested in Wanda because I love seeing the strong women characters
Yeah.
come out in some of these, and to know that Wanda and Captain Marvel and probably Jane will be
Yep.
the three most powerful characters in the MCU once they get up to Love and Thunder. I kind of like that. That's like a go girl moment.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know how they're gonna. I don't know if it's gonna be. I don't want it to be a disappointment, and I'm hesitating because I don't. I'm fearing that it might not have as big of appeal. I think Loki will. I think
Yeah.
Loki has a lot of huge potential to bring us back up into that crazy feeling that we have right now. But genius on their part. And uh, again, at the very beginning, I apologize for doubting WandaVision when I first saw it. I don't doubt it now. And I have two conflicting issues right now. I want it to end because I need the answers, because I want to know if Dottie was a red herring. I want to know if the mailman is really in. I mean, if it was, it's just like an old Clue thing. It was the
Yeah.
mailman in Westview with the pizza.
Yeah.
Um, I, I want to figure this out, but then again, I don't want it to end because I
Yeah.
want to look. I want to have this feeling of anticipation. And um, obviously, I belong to a lot of different Disney groups, and we're always talking about the parks and what's going on there. For the last 2 weeks, no one's been talking about the Disney
Yes.
parks.
Yeah. I know.
All we've been
I know.
talking about is WandaVision. And it kind of hit me the other night when I was in one of these Zoom calls where we're all trying to guess who the big bad's going to be. And the realization of, has anybody even talked about the possibility that Disneyland might be opening soon? Maybe we should consider that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it takes over the
Yes.
narrative, and it just that's what makes these so much fun. And to your point about strong women in the MCU, I mean, obviously you had the scene in Infinity War, you had the scene in Endgame, and I would throw a character like Shuri in there as well, who
Mm.
is the the genius of all geniuses
Yeah.
in the MCU. I mean, even to the point where, well, if something happens with Vision, that there is some being still left. Um, I mean, look at her final movements in Infinity War, of
Yeah.
where people are still speculating what she was able to do with him. Um, so the last thing that I want to talk about is, I like to ask kind of rapid questions for everybody,
No pressure.
and most of them, they deal with the parks, most of them, and you can explain if you want. You don't have to give any explanation if you don't want to. But the first one is, as someone who has, I believe, been to every Disney park, or
Yes.
Disney resort, I should say. Um, do you have a favorite resort? And by that, I mean Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Shanghai, Paris.
I have been to all of them, and I do, and it's Disney Sea.
Okay.
Tokyo Disney Sea by a landslide in a lot of ways, only because of how it was almost like Imagineering got a hunk of land and no limits on their budget.
Yeah.
And here you kind of see that happen where the blue sky you knew went a whole another direction, but they had some limitations in budget. But Disney Sea really does kind of take it up a notch.
Yeah.
Um, Nothing like sitting there having lunch and a volcano goes off right next to you. And uh, I just adore that park. And if I could only go back to one, that would be the first I would go back
Okay.
to.
Okay. And that, I've heard that many, many times, and the students watch the Imagineering story in the class. And you know, there's that one episode where they're kind of contrasting what was going on at Disney Sea and what was going on when they were trying to build California Adventure in the first iteration of California Adventure.
Yeah.
Um, anywhere you've been, do you have a favorite ride attraction?
Wow. Pirates in Shanghai is
Okay.
definitely up there. Um, Man, when Rise of Resistance came along, I got to tell you, that kind of blew everything out of the water there too. But let me tell you about one that sticks out to me, and it's crazy good. And it was a temporary thing. It was a temporary thing set up in Hong Kong. Um, that it was during Halloween, but it was a Marvel attraction. It was a walk through attraction,
Okay.
and you walk in, there's a little marble thing that's, built up into what looks like trailers. I mean, it
Hmm.
definitely looked like it was temporary. But you walk in and you are being inducted as being a shield agent.
Oh,
And
that's cool.
oh my gosh, something horribly has gone wrong, and somebody's taken something, and you need to now be put into action. And everyone around you is going, run, 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 and literally telling you to run, because of course it's China, so
Yeah.
they don't care if you trip over each other apparently. So you run into the next room, and you're being explained that something has disappeared, and you need to go. They need everybody's help to go find
Hmm.
it. And all of a sudden, Doctor Strange shows up out of nowhere. And he goes, all right, we need to get you to the sanctum because you need to go find out, da da da. And all of a sudden you turn around and it's pitch dark behind you. And all of a sudden the sparks show up in this teeny little round, and it gets
That's
bigger and bigger
cool.
and bigger. And all of a sudden a tunnel opens up and you have to run through the tunnel. And all of a sudden you're in Asgard. And in Asgard, you have to get something from Thor to go grab that to take it to the next sanctum. And I was there with Lou Mangello, and we went through this entire thing, and it was not even in English the first time we went through because, China. So we kind of had to figure out that was going on. We went through from room to room to room. When we got out of it and we were done, we looked at each other and our jaws were on the floor. I had never experienced anything so visually stunning and so immersive and so surprising in a temporary attraction.
Yeah.
We had to do it again. And then we did it again. And we finally got one that was English so
Yeah.
we could put it all together. But that, honestly, out of every Disney attraction I've ever been on, was probably one of the most impactful.
That's really cool. You know, I've actually only been to Walt Disney World. We were supposed to go to Disneyland in May and for a conference, but so you know, the whole Marvel contract,
Yeah.
not being able to be in Walt Disney World, I would love for that to change. But yeah, that sounds really, really fun. That
It
sounds like
was
a
so
really cool
cool.
one.
I talked to
Um,
somebody at Marvel later about it, and I said, "Could we possibly see that sometime?" And I kind of got the side eye of, "We never know." So I'm gonna take that as a thing, an indication that maybe someday we'll see something like that again. And
maybe.
cannot wait for Avengers Campus.
I was
FYI.
gonna say maybe that will be a future attraction at Avengers Campus. That um, the do you have a favorite show attraction? And that could be stage show. That could be on any of the cruises in the parks. It could be a parade or show that's just kind of pop up.
Wow, that's all right because I love my pyrotechnics. So that's like asking me to pick my favorite child. I am, my soul does belong to Illuminations in
Okay.
many ways, just because, but that show has so many flaws to it though still, so it's probably not. I think World of Color at DCA,
Okay.
at
Yeah.
California Adventure, is probably up there as being in the top three. Um, and because it is so scalable and they can change it on a whim,
Hmm.
so they can change it from holiday to the regular show to A Kiss Goodnight. There's so much that they can do with that, and it is it's meant for so many people to see it and enjoy it too. I appreciate that.
Okay. Anywhere that you've been, a favorite resort or hotel?
Different ones for different reasons. Um, I There's something about the Animal Kingdom Lodge for
Okay.
me. At Savannah View, when you wake up in the morning, and I'm one of those that sleeps with the curtains open so that I can open my eyes and see a giraffe eating outside the window. That just is a whole different world for me. It's about that experience piece. Um, that was amazing. I have had a couple of very unusual, amazing experiences. I was able to stay in the Cinderella suite
Oh, okay.
at um, at Paris. So I was it's the only suite that overlooks the entire park. And I woke up in the suite at 2 o'clock in the morning to the sounds of a parade. And my husband and I ran to the balcony and threw up throughout opened up the shutters, and it was parade testing, and they were doing it for like
Oh,
two
that's
hours.
cool.
So we sat out there in our robes and got coffee and watched the parade testing, and that was pretty amazing. So I think that those are probably the two that mean the most to me.
Yeah.
But Grand Californian is also up there too, because there's nothing like getting in an elevator, going down to the first floor, and being in a park.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, so then anywhere you've been, and this can include downtown Disney, Disney Springs also. Do you have a favorite restaurant?
Man, you're hitting me with all the ones that I have like 42 answers for. Um, wow. Yes. um, wow. I'm trying to pick a favorite, but that's a hard one.
If you top three, if you need, you can.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. For different reasons. Again, it's that whole different things for different reasons. Believe it or not, I really love me a cozy cone
Okay.
at the Cozy Cone Motel. If you're looking for like a quick service type
Yeah.
grab food, I love that place. Or any the corn dog. Um, Believe it or not, I'm a sucker for a corn dog in California. Um, I do like, all right, because this is going to get me in trouble when I say it, but I really do love Club 33. I'll throw that one in there. One of my favorite restaurants. It's got beautiful selections of food. It's a great place if you get a chance to ever go there. And if anybody ever invites you, don't say no. I take them up on it because the food is amazing. Um, wow. I like almost anything in Japan and Epcot.
Okay.
I love teppanyaki. It's probably one of my very favorite celebration dinners, and because you can do it with your friends, with so many friends all at one table, and it's a show, dinner and a show at the same time, kind of like that. Tutto Gusto
Okay.
is also in there because it takes me back to Italy, and the food is amazing. The wine selection is great. It has that very homey. It feels like you're in Italy, in Rome.
Yeah.
So I think those are probably up there in the top.
Okay. And then the the last one, anywhere a favorite treat or like a must-have treat with your when you're in any of the parks.
Well, I kind of hit it with the corn dog.
Yeah.
That is a definite must have at Disneyland. It's that kind of throws me back to my childhood. Um, I am a sucker for a Dole Whip with rum. When you can get that. So that's one of them. Sadly, this speaks to my personality, but I do really enjoy like the Grand Marnier slushy in France is
Okay.
one of my. I have to stop and get one of those when I get an opportunity. Um, I'm a sweets person, but it's so easy to go down the path and gain too much weight from all of the funnel cakes and churros that are
Yeah.
available to you. So I try not to lean on those too much, more of the savory side of things if I can
Yeah.
go there. But yeah, I drink most of my treats. Let's say.
Well, Well, thank you so much for talking with us. And I could go on and on and on, but I'll let you get about your day. Thank you so much for talking with us. And again, if any of the students or listeners want to follow you, what's the best way they can do it?
Best way is on any of the social channels. I am the same on every one, on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter. It's at Beci Mahnken, spelled Beci Mahnken. So I
Okay.
would love, anyone needs to message me. You have any questions? If you disagree with any of my top choices, please tell me. I'll always be open to discussing anything Marvel or Disney with anybody because it truly is a passion. And I appreciate the invite. This has been a lot of fun talking about it. And now I can't wait to go out and see what everybody's saying about WandaVision.
Yeah, thank you so much, Becky, and have a great rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.